Welcome back to the 0 to KSM challenge for what could be the last episode of the series. If we start pushing into the 15s, today could be the day. But before we jump into today's episode, if you would like to watch me live or perhaps join me for some Keystones, I stream over on Twitch a few days a week. A link to that and all of my other socials can be found below. This week we start with an item level of 425 and a Mythic Plus rating of 1779. So we're incredibly close. And before we jump into any Mythic Plus dungeons, we need to open the vault. But of course we must do the PvP? Nah, not for me. So there were only two things that I really wanted from today's vault. Obviously tier would be amazing, but top of my list would be the Rain Song trinket. So last week's vault for the rest of my characters, well, let's just say I had a very good week. All of the characters that had a vault got some really good items. And well, when I opened this vault, it seems that they saved the best for last. Because that's right, we finally got it. Yeah, not gonna lie, kinda felt like I was gonna finish this challenge before I actually got the trinket, but things are starting to look pretty good. Though sadly, this does mean that we won't get 4 set today. Oh well, can't have everything I guess. The key we are presented with this week is an Underrot 14. And before I listed my key, there was something I wanted to go and do. Although I cannot get my 4 set today, I do have enough charges to get my 2 set. So I had a choice between my legs and my shoulders. My shoulders were a hero piece and my legs were a champion piece. If I took the shoulders, I would be dropping a load of haste. And although I think in most cases it's probably smart to convert the hero piece over the champion piece, I felt like it was quite possible to get tier shoulders from future vaults. And I'm gonna upgrade my legs anyway, so they're gonna get replaced regardless. And the legs were something I could also upgrade with Wyrm crests, whereas hero shoulders at that item level required aspect crests. Something I didn't really have. Along with this, in terms of gear, there were 2 things I forgot. Well, one I forgot, one I just completely derped. So when I got the Spore Cloak, I forgot to enchant it, so I went ahead and did that. And in the previous comments, there were a couple of people that noticed my neck had no gems. Yeah, not gonna lie, I forgot this was a thing. So yeah, I fixed that too. Man, I feel silly. Before I jumped into Mythic Plus, I felt a little rusty on the monk, so I decided to warm up with a random heroic. Yeah, the first dungeon or 2 every week, I usually get this feeling, like the rusty feeling. I only really get to play the monk on a Wednesday, and I honestly can't wait for the challenge to be over so I can just pick it up and play it whenever I want. I mean, I could jump into some random heroics during the week, but it's just not the same thing, and it doesn't present that challenge. Along with that, I really want to try Windwalker and Brewmaster because I've really enjoyed them in the past. They are both very, very good. They offer a lot, and well, we've already started acquiring some of the gear for them, so the monk is really starting to feel like a very strong contender as a new main. Alright, so Underrot 14. It started great. I took the wrong portal. God damn it. Let's try that again. So once again, in terms of score and item level, we start at 425 and our rating is 1779. And because it's my own key, I'm going to take full advantage and I'm going to handpick some fairly geared players that have been here previously. Oh, and I haven't mentioned this week's affixes. It is a tyrannical week, which means I'm dreading a few bosses. Well, quite a lot of them actually. At +7, we have the return of Afflicted. I mean, to be honest, this is absolutely fine. It's really easy to deal with. I'm going to invite a couple of classes that can actually help with the dispels. And of course, I'm going to be vocal in party chat at the beginning of the dungeon just to make sure they're on the same page. Because although I am more prepared than last time, I just shouldn't have to deal with it by myself. And then at +14, we have Bolstering. I think this is the first time we deal with Bolstering. I honestly can't remember. Man, memory bad. So when a non-boss enemy dies, its death cry empowers nearby allies, temporarily increasing their damage by 20%. Yeah, this stacks as well, by the way. And I'm quite thankful we get this on a tyrannical week, because bolstering on fortified? Did that happen back in the day? That must have been rough. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still really new to the Mythic Plus scene, so just the thought of bolstering, like empowered adds on fortified weeks when they're already like a lot stronger, that just sounds cruel, man. So we begin this run and everything seems to be going just fine. I still feel fairly rusty at this point. Thankfully it's tyrannical, so the first couple of trash packs goes down really well. I don't stand in the frontals this time either. The first boss, absolutely fine. We start clearing the arena for the second boss, and well, I legit thought I was standing just outside the area of the Maggot's Cone ability. Yeah, I wasn't. It's okay though, the hunter died first, right? The second boss starts off really well. I think positioning all in all could be a lot better for most of us. We get the boss to 23% and I mean, at the time, I honestly thought I was standing behind, but looking back, nah. If you are standing like slightly to the side of the boss, yeah, it's not going to end well. At this point, I was actually quite mad at myself. It's such a simple ability to just sidestep, and my add-ons are literally telling me to move out the way. Like, I shouldn't mess this up. So yeah, I was a little tilted. And look at me, writing in party chat. What a noob. Thankfully for me, we had a Ret Paladin in the group because they finished the boss. And in terms of damage, he's kind of carrying. Alright, so he's completely carrying. Yep, still need to play one of those. I was kind of dreading the third boss with all the mushrooms and the healing. I misplay a few times, but surprisingly, no one dies. I know, I'm as shocked as you are. Though shortly after, the tank decides to pull quite a spicy group. I think this pull here, even at higher keys, is something that most groups do. I knew it was going to be challenging. I assumed someone was going to die, but the entire group are sitting on so many defensive cooldowns, including myself, by the way. I should have popped mine a lot sooner and not waited until like the last second when I panic. But yeah, it's definitely something to take note of, especially on fortified weeks. And I guess CC would have been nice here too. We lacked a lot of that. The rest of the run goes absolutely fine. We take down the last boss, 2 chests in this key, and it takes our total rating up to 1,805. And along with this, we loot a ring with some haste and mastery. Not a bad start to the week. The next key we are presented with is an Alderman 16. That's right, we're not messing around this week, we're going for it. Now, this is a place that I need a lot of practice with. Nearly every boss in this place, I just struggle to heal. Whether that be raw output or my positioning, or maybe both. But yeah, the first 3 bosses especially, I get incredibly flustered. I start misplaying, I get timings all wrong, I let people die, and it just goes horribly. In situations like this, for the most part, there is a lot I need to work on. I still get incredibly flustered, as mentioned, and more often than not, when I panic, I tend to turn to those soothing mist spot heals instead of relying on my offensive abilities. You guys have pointed it out a couple of times over the last couple of episodes, and I'm fully aware. I know in some places I need to believe and trust in my offensive abilities, but I honestly just panic and I derp and I just turn to soothing mists. There is a lot more that I'm doing wrong and need to improve on, but I think for the most part this is the biggest factor and is why I struggle a lot. Though I don't think I'm alone in this. I think a lot of people struggle with this too. And I think once I figure this out, I'm going to be able to push a lot higher. So second time round it goes a lot better, no one dies this time, and we take down the boss. We move on to the second boss, and to be honest, it's kind of the same story as the first. Although not entirely my fault, I guess. There are always going to be things that I can do a lot better. I am starting to trust the fact that now I have 4 targets, I can just throw down my Failing Stomp and start spamming Spinning Crane Kick. However, when the boss starts casting Thundering Slam, yeah, you just can't stand in that. Including the tank, by the way. I guess I could have used Cocoon. Perhaps that would have saved them, but I honestly just presumed they would move out. Not entirely my fault, of course. There's no amount of Spinning Crane Kick that's going to save anyone from that. But I always look at the failures not only from myself, but everyone else, just to see if there's something I can do to make the situation better. Second time round, and we managed to get down the boss without anyone dying. Seems like we just need 2 attempts on these guys. We get to the next lot of ads, and unfortunately the tank dies. We end up finishing off the ads, but the Ret Paladin dies as well. Now, not only because of my bad performances on the day, but I just wasn't having a great day in general. And I don't know if it was the double question marks, but today really wasn't the day to mess with Dilly.
Healer? DPS? Tank?
It looked like Suppy had my back too. I was gonna res you eventually, man, chill your beans. Now, third boss for the most part went down absolutely fine, but this is definitely one I struggle with. On fights like this with this damage pattern and other bosses that require a lot of AoE healing, I'm trying to get better with my Shaylin's gift. In previous episodes, I've shown moments where I've completely failed. This week saw some improvements, but I still need a lot of practice. We do take down this boss, but unfortunately right at the end, I let the hunter die. I say let like it was on purpose. I know it's a hunter and all, but I just suck, okay? I give them some credit as well because they're actually using their defensives in a really good way. Like Turtle for the knockback, the healing ability that I have no idea what the name is. Yeah, they used that just before they died. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get to them in time. And then I guess the warrior panics because after the boss dies and there's still a load of damage going out, they use rally. Could have done with that earlier, man. We get to the 4th boss and guess what? I suck again. I'm not going to show too much to this boss, though I will show you a moment where I have 10 stacks of Shaylin's gift. I have revival, and there's a lot of AoE damage going out. Along with this, I'm trying to dispel afflicted, dodge the orbs, and spread from the fire. Yeah, sometimes there's just too much going on, man. I decide to use revival. It's a little bit late. I'm also sitting on other cooldowns that I should have used. And then unfortunately, the paladin takes one of those fire orbs to the face. Just as the boss is about to go down, I find myself in the situation where I just have no mana. And I have no idea what happened here, but afflicted spawned. You can see the dispel animation, but the afflicted is still there. Did one spawn on top of the other, or did it just bug? Ah well, we killed the boss. Moving on. So last boss of the dungeon is very tight for space. And yeah, things were a little hairy at times. Unfortunately, an afflicted went off, though I managed to power through. We lost a couple of DPS to the frontal ability at the end, but thankfully with 29 seconds remaining and 23 deaths in total, we managed to time this plus 16. That brought our total rating up to 1,830. In terms of key level, our previous highest was 14, and we just timed a 60. A 16! That's crazy! I couldn't believe it. Now, the key I got from this place was a freehold 17. And I don't know if you've ever run your own freehold key, but this place is very popular. I wanted to do the 17, but I also wanted a little more practice before I pushed even further. So instead, I started signing up to a few keys. And then I guess it was really time to push myself, because we jumped into a Vortex Pinnacle 15. Push myself? Punish myself? Either way, it was a key I needed to do. Now, would you believe me if I told you that this was probably the smoothest run this week? Yeah, I wouldn't believe me either. Not with my history. The first boss goes down absolutely fine. I managed to rotate my AoE abilities and healing is so much better this week. Plus, the prop warrior can do a lot of self-healing. And then we have the off-healing from all 3 of the DPS being double rep paladin and an elemental shaman. We get to the dragon boss and this is the one I am dreading the most. Because like mentioned, my history with this guy, well, I mean, you've seen the previous episodes, or at least I hope you have. It just doesn't go well. However, this group was different. These guys were doing quite a bit of damage. They were dodging all the frontals. They were standing upwind, and when it came to downburst, I'm pretty sure no one messed up on that either. Oh, and me too, by the way. Check this out. I'm so good at this game. We start making our way to the 3rd and final boss, and we finally have our first death. The paladin nearly made it to the triangle, but sadly, I think they realized a little too late. Didn't that happen last week? There's not really anything to cover on the last boss, to be honest. We've been through this place quite a few times already. No one makes any mistakes. And healing felt so good. We take down this boss 2 chests in the run and it takes our total rating up to 1,890. I was actually a little shocked to see how much score I got from this place. And that sudden realization that KSM is literally within touching distance. We didn't get any loot from this run, but a Rainson trinket would have been bloody hilarious. Oh, and as it turns out, both of the rep paladins were queued together, and they wanted to keep me for a Neltharian's Lair 17. Do I take this as a compliment? Well, either way, they gave up forming the run because we just couldn't find a tank. So I ended up queuing up for a few keys, and I got into a Neltharius 16. And this run couldn't have started any better. We were grouping up the first lot of ads, they start casting a frontal ability, and dearly goes... Once again, first death is me. Yeah, tilted already. But don't worry, because in this group, we have a hunter. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get some entertainment out of this run. And well, you guys remember the blazing charge ability that Magma Tusk does? Well... yeah, not once, not twice, but 3 times. But what I didn't expect is lava to come through the walls. I guess I deserved that one. I give these guys credit, they weren't toxic at all, they were actually really nice. But after 3 wipes, we just decided it wasn't gonna happen. I did ask the group if they wanted to down it to a 15 and try again, but sadly they declined. So I looked for another one and I got into a 14. I thought perhaps the 16 was a bit too much for me, so I went a little lower. And then we met Maestro, the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Yeah, this guy wasn't messing around. I mean, I like a fast-paced run, but when you're tanking, you should really adjust to the group. If we haven't got like either the healing or the damage, then maybe you slow down a little bit. It was fine for the most part. I managed to keep up. However, on Chargath, yeah, you might want to stagger those chains a bit more. They hurt. As for Forge Master Garek, and there's so much healing required in that fight, it doesn't help that positioning for everyone else is pretty awful, but it felt really good to finish over 70k HPS. Yeah, it was good to see those kind of numbers. Now, I'm not going to cover everything in this place because once again, I mean, we've been here time and time before. But I did want to share this quick little tip about the lava bearers. You know, the ads that leave behind little lava pools on the floor? Yeah, well, if you aggro these and you end up jumping down, they actually teleport and follow you. So you can just drag these into the next group and take them down together. You may not want to do this all the time, but when you have a group that's more than capable, I mean, this is a 14 and these guys are pretty overgeared for the place, then yeah, probably something you should consider. We have a few more casualties at the last boss where things get a little sloppy, though we end up taking him down 2 chests in this run and it takes our total rating up to 1,921. We don't get any loot from this run, but as I roll away, I notice that the Shaman actually loots one of the weapons. I quickly inspect them to see that they've already got 2, and I can tell because they're both enchanted. So I simply ask in chat if he needs it. I mean, I'm pretty sure no one else does. And would you believe it? It actually gets traded to me. So I now have the main hand and the other offhand from this place. In terms of off-spec items, we're pretty set when it comes to Windwalker and Brewmaster, and I can't wait to try them out. Yo, you. Yeah, you. Did you know that leaving a like on this video increases your chances of getting the best loot from your weekly vault? Alright, so maybe it doesn't. Fine, I get it. I know when I'm not wanted. Back to the video. From here, I decide maybe it's time. Maybe we do our own key, a freehold 17. The highest I have ever gone before. And you bet I'm going to be super picky about who I take. Because as mentioned, freehold is very popular. So I list the key and it doesn't take long for a group to sign up. Accepting groups can usually be a good thing, because there's usually some coordination, so you would assume things go a lot smoother. But that's never always the case, and this group included 2 hunters. Oh no. We start clearing trash at the first boss, and here is where we have our first casualty. Can you guess who it was? Well, one of the hunters, obviously. Did you really think it was me? Yeah, it usually is, but not this time. Now, first boss I make some mistakes where I get flustered, I don't deal with the powder shot ability very well, and I simply let DPS die because of it. I noticed looking back at the footage I'm sitting on Renewing Mists and Vivify procs. I've also got some cooldowns and utility I'm not using. It's just one of those moments where you get flustered, you tunnel, you brain fart. You've been there, man, you know what I mean. Anyway, we move on from here, and there's not too much to cover, though there are quite a few deaths, and that's mostly due to individual mistakes. Yeah, I may have stood in a few things. So we get to the pack with the officer just before the last boss. And here is where I actually have a question for you guys, because as we've showcased many times before, this pack really hurts. So I get into a situation here where I have more than 4 targets, so basically I want to throw down my Failing Stomp and just spam Spinning Crane Kick. But as you can see here, the tank is the only one that's taking a lot of damage. So do I consider using my other offensive abilities? Will that do more healing to one target? Yeah, it also takes me far too long to throw a Renewing Mists on them as well. I know there are quite a few times where I forget to throw on Renewing Mists as well as the Vivify procs. A lot of you guys have mentioned this and I'm not ignoring you, I'm fully aware. I just brain fart, okay? So yeah, 4 targets, Spinning Crane Kick. Should that be enough? Should I use other abilities? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, we push on and we do in fact time this run, and it takes our total rating up to 1,955. Now, completing 17s means we move into that bracket of hero gear, and although I pick up loot from this run, it gives me a back piece after I've just gone and got my Spore Cloak. With 45 score remaining for KSM, we find ourselves in an Eltharian's Lair 14. But this was a run I was dreading because of the 3rd boss, Naraxus. Yeah, this guy, even on a fortified key, it scares the crap out of me. To my surprise, we only have 1 death leading up to this guy, but things were about to change. So yeah, at times during this fight, I find myself using my healing abilities rather than my offensive abilities. Just the amount of sheer damage that I have to deal with. And it's not like I can predict when they're standing in the poison. But I will give myself some credit. I felt like during this encounter, I was really good with the renewing mists. Sure, in terms of min-max, there were a couple of times where I let slip. But for the most part, I felt like I did a really good job. Though unfortunately, I do end up losing the priest. Looking back at the footage, I did try casting a Shaylan's Gift at 3 stacks, when perhaps I should have used Revival. Either way, there were 2 party members taking a lot of damage and I just struggled. So eventually we lose more DPS. Because of this, the boss starts consuming the adds and gets a massive damage buff, and of course we end up wiping. Take 2 goes a lot better, and we also have Bloodlust for this pull. There is a moment where I feel like I'm going to lose both the Hunter and the Priest. I decide to stop using my offensive abilities and go for Soothing Mists. I think this is the right play, and it works. But maybe it was wrong and I could have done things better. I don't know. Once again, let me know in the comments below what you think I should have done. Oh, and make sure you timestamp it too, because I'm old and forgetful, so I'm gonna forget that I've asked this question. On to the last boss, and everything was going to plan. The adds were being dealt with quickly, no one was taking unnecessary damage, and like mentioned before, we only needed 45 rating for KSM. And our previous run was a +10. So was this it? Is this the run we achieve Keystone Master? The boss goes down. But sadly, we don't achieve KSM just yet, because that takes our total rating up to 1,988. So surely, the next dungeon is the one. And I can think of no better place than my favourite dungeon for Season 2, Bracken Hide Hollow. And this was a +15. The group I join includes a prop paladin, a rep paladin, a balanced druid, and of course a BM hunter. And everyone's fairly geared, so I'm kinda hopeful. The first couple of packs go really well. The rep paladin and the BM hunter are pulling some serious numbers, the prop paladin's taking very little damage, and although I haven't had to mention it a lot, Afflicted is being dealt with very well. Yeah, this week for Afflicted has been so much better. We get to the first boss and I know Gash Frenzy is going to be a pain to deal with. I deal with the first one very well, but when it comes to the second one, well, I realised that I haven't actually used all of my renewing mists and there's a couple of targets that don't have them. I do panic a little, but thankfully I use Revival to cure 2 of them, and then I pop Cocoon on myself along with Soothing Mists and I spam Vivify to heal me up. I noticed that I did use Enveloping Mists instead of using Soothing Mists first. I obviously know you shouldn't use it this way, because if you use Soothing Mists first, Enveloping Mist becomes instant, and then all your Vivifiers will do extra healing. I guess in the heat of the moment, I just panicked and did things incorrectly. Nevertheless, we took down the boss, and so far, 0 deaths. This got me super excited, as we only needed 12 rating to achieve KSM. But there was more work to be done. We move on to Treemouth, and, well, we have 2 paladins, so this wasn't an issue. We move on to Gutshot, and once again, this guy is not really much of an issue. Though the annoying part to this fight during this run is the fact that we managed to get the boss down to 1%, and then the hunter of all classes gets targeted by the hyenas and just isn't quick enough to kite them into the traps. Well, it would have been nice to time this dungeon, achieve KSM, and complete a flawless run. Would have been a good way to end the series, right? Yeah, well don't worry, because we've still got 1 boss to go. We start making our way over the bridge towards the last boss, and what happened to the druid? Another bridge boss strikes again. But then we find ourselves at the last boss, Raphi. And with over 13 minutes remaining, things were looking positive. So, we began this encounter. The hunter pops Bloodlust, and we begin taking down the boss. Although I feel confident and comfortable healing now, that wasn't always the case. And looking back at how I was performing in the early stages of this series, it's fair to say that I've come a long way. We finally did it. We finally achieved Keystone Master. Because we did in fact +2 this key, and it took our total rating up to 2008. Oh, but it gets better, because the prop paladin loots a tree mouth trinket, which is not only good for them, but it's also very good for my off-spec, Brewmaster. Something that I actually want to try, and we've already accumulated so much really good gear for it. I quickly inspect them, and I can see that it's a very strong possibility that they don't need it. Now, I've tanked this place a lot on multiple characters to get this trinket, and up until last week, I've never seen it drop. So the fact that I go to loot the chest myself and see this, yeah, there's gonna be some angry tanks in the comments. So, we've achieved Keystone Master. What's next for the monk? Well, I'm sure there are a bunch of you guys that want me to carry on the series. But if I'm being completely honest, I just don't have the time right now, so I'm kind of glad we finished it where we did. That doesn't mean I won't make a future episode, perhaps to update you guys on my progress, but I'm not going to limit that strictly to pugs. So perhaps the following weekend, once I've given everyone enough time to get up to date with the series, and just so that I don't spoil anything, my monk can actually heal some community keys, which I've been very much looking forward to. So once again, to those on EU, if you would like to join me for some Keystones, you can do so over on Twitch, where I stream a few days a week. On Saturday, we run what I call the Saturday Social, which is very much dedicated to you guys. We do this around 1 PM UK time, and it's open to absolutely everyone. We can do a +2 if you've never jumped into a key before. We can even push into the 20s. It's completely down to you. And of course, I look to rotate the groups every Keystone so that we can get as many of you involved as possible. So if that's something you guys are interested in, I'll have my Twitch and all of my other socials linked below. Alright, so Keystone Master achieved. But that doesn't quite mean the series is over. Not yet anyway, because I like to end these challenges in a certain way. Firstly, we're going to start pushing our own key as far as we can take it. And then, just like the DK, we're going to jump off of the highest point in Valdrakken and just see how far we can go. In Season 1 with the DK, we got pretty far because we had the Nitro boots. The Monk doesn't have that, but we do have Roll, and that could take us a long way. But before we jump into any of those, I just wanted to share my thoughts about the Monk, healing in general, and the series. So of course, it's probably worth mentioning to those that haven't seen any of Season 1. Season 1 we did the Blood DK, and that was completely picked by myself. I chose a role that I was unfamiliar with and a class that I knew nothing about. It was a challenge. It was very hard. And I therefore decided for every season going forward, the community would then pick my next role and class for next season's KSM challenge. For the time being, I'm quite happy with the first challenge being a KSM challenge because so far, they have actually been challenging. I understand there are players a lot better than myself. I don't consider myself a good player, and it's probably very achievable for someone to just pick up any class and grind for a couple of weeks and achieve KSM. Yeah, I simply can't do that. And the fact that I only play these challenge characters once a week, usually on a Wednesday, I just don't have the time. So near the end of the season, I will announce both on Discord and on Twitter a poll for Season 3 where you guys can both vote for the role and the spec that I play. And because Season 1 included a tank and Season 2 was a healer, we only have ranged and melee DPS left. That also sadly cancels out both the DK and the Monk. Alright, that's Season 3, but what about the rest of Season 2? Well, I do have another 2 challenges planned, but because there's some stuff going on right now, I think I'm going to have to take maybe a week or 2 off from YouTube content. These 2 challenges that I do have planned, however, are not just your normal generic KSM, so they will either have their own twist or push a bit further. And you've probably guessed it by now, but these characters and classes, the roles that I'm playing for the next challenges, are purely decided by myself and have been planned for a long time. Alright, so let's talk about the challenge first, and as mentioned, I've not healed since Cataclysm, and that was in a raid environment, so it's very different to what we have now with Mythic Plus. It was very interesting from a healer's perspective. You get to see so much more to what's going on. You get to see all the mistakes people are making. You get to see who's standing in all the stuff, because obviously you are monitoring every other player trying to keep them alive. You see who's not stunning and interrupting, and it's just given me a whole new way of looking at Mythic Plus. It's very, very different to the typical melee DPS that I'm used to. But then we have the type of healer. The types of healers that I imagine are stuff like Resto Shaman and Holy Priest. You know, if players are missing health, then you start healing them. So that's the reactive approach to healing. I knew nothing about proactive healing, and it's still challenging now. But I think because of this experience, going into next season and future seasons, I think I'm going to have at least one character that can heal, because it just makes learning so much easier. Like mentioned, you see so much of the dungeon, the damage patterns and when to use defensives, which DPS don't seem to do. Yeah, I don't see myself ever being like a main healer, but never say never, right? However, healing is definitely something I'm going to carry on, and I'm so glad I did this challenge. I think you could have made it a lot easier by picking something like a Resto Shaman, but I'm super happy and glad that you guys voted for Mistweaver Monk. It's been an experience. And I love Brewmaster and Windwalker, so the fact that I've been able to accumulate some of the gear for that, yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more of the Monk. Along with this, it's also nice to have a healer for Saturday socials, because when we run keys together as a community, we usually lack a healer. So now I can tank, heal, and DPS. Very poorly, but still. And I am potentially changing my main from a demon hunter, so the fact that a monk can DPS, tank, heal, and I enjoy all three of them, well, that makes the monk a very strong contender. Alright, I've waffled on for far too long, let's get back to the rest of the episode. So it was time to push my own key as far as I could go. And unfortunately for me, the key I had was an Alderman 18, the place I struggled the most. But before we jump into any of that, I decide to go to the catalyst and catalyze my shoulders. Along with this, because we achieved KSM, we have a token to spend at a vendor in Zarelek Caverns, and this gives us our 4 set. To push things even further, I go and spend what crests I have available. And from here, I manage to upgrade my chest and my legs. And that brings our total item level up to 429. So, Alderman 18. The group I put together is very, very high on item level. Everyone is hovering around 440. We have a Vengeance Demon Hunter, which pumps out a hell of a lot of damage. We have a Rep Paladin. I don't really need to say much about those, do I? And then we have a Balanced Druid and an Elemental Shaman. So we had a pretty decent comp, but unfortunately, that included me. So we get to the first boss, the Dwarves. Beolog starts casting Heavy Arrow. I should have spread away from the group. I don't know what I was doing moving in, and unfortunately, it takes me out. I do get picked up by the Druid, but at this point, we have the Longboat raid going on. Everyone's taken a lot of damage, and I'm in a state of panic. And with all the fire on the ground, I have no idea where to stand. This is always a tricky one for me. Yeah, it's safe to say that this one didn't start off very well, and I'm pretty sure I'm the reason the Shaman died. Trying to find a bit of space, I seem to roll in their direction when they have the ricochet on them. And yeah, they go splat. However, they do manage to pick themselves up, and we take down the Dwarves. We move on to Bromac, and oh my dilly-dally, there is so much healing for this one. Though, thankfully for me, with all the adds, I can simply throw down Failing Stomp, maybe with a few defensives and utility spells thrown in there as well, and I could just spam Spinning Crane Kick, and it works. For the most part anyway. Obviously there's more to it. There were some pretty sketchy times during this encounter where everyone was pretty low on HP, though the entire group did a fantastic job of rotating their defensives, which helped massively. Now, I don't know what it is about this boss, but I seem to get the timings of the damage patterns incredibly wrong. Alderman is a place that I've probably come to the least out of all the other dungeons, so maybe I just need a bit of practice, but it's typically the dot that's put out on players, along with the knockback, that I just don't get the timings right for. And well, you'll see here that the Druid has the Earthen Shards debuff on them. I start panic healing them, forgetting that we've got the knockback coming out, and sadly they die. And yes, I'm full aware that I'm not using all of my Renewing Mists. There's a lot of cooldowns that I'm not using. We've got stuff like Manatee and our Trinket. I've also got stuff like Cocoon and Revival. I'm fully aware of everything I'm doing wrong. I think this was just one of those runs. This is the highest key I've gone so far. The damage output is significantly higher than what I'm used to. And boy oh boy was I feeling the pressure. The Druid gets picked back up, and then we find ourselves in the situation where the boss unfortunately enrages. There is so much damage being pumped out. Again, there's still some things I can do better. I try keeping the Druid alive, but sadly for the second time, I let them die. So we do end up wiping to this boss. We make our way back, only to discover that the Druid is offline. Perhaps not entirely my fault, but I still blamed myself for this one. So this is where the challenge should have finished, but I felt like I owed you guys more. And everyone in the group, apart from the Druid obviously, decided that they wanted to stay and try something else. A couple of the guys had some 18s, and unfortunately for me, the one that they wanted to do was Vortex Pinnacle. I lost quite a bit of confidence after the Alderman run. I felt great achieving KSM, but the Alderman run kinda squished that. and I felt like I at least had to give it a go. So we start this run, everything seems to be going fine. We take down the first boss and we only have 2 deaths. Only one during this encounter where the warrior's just standing in a bit too much and I don't get to them in time. The first death was the shaman being catapulted off of the side. I guess they stood in stuff and got knocked off. Onto the second boss, and even at this level, players still seem to forget that you have to stand upwind. And throughout the entire fight, the tank faces the dragon away from the rest of the group. This didn't cause any issues, but it was just weird to me. Is this a thing? Anyway, on top of players taking unnecessary damage, the overall DPS is really lacking. I get that this encounter can be a tricky one, but at a plus 18, it just wasn't good enough. Now, unfortunately for me, because I get flustered and there's just so much damage going out, I derp and get hit by downburst. This means I take a lot of damage and of course I am silent, so I end up dying. We attempt this boss again and it doesn't go any better. Positioning isn't great. Because of this, players take unnecessary damage, and it also means they're not dealing as much damage as they could be. We attempt this for a third and final time, and once again I get completely flustered. I end up dying to downburst, the group wipes, and we end up agreeing as a group that this clearly isn't going to happen. It's actually quite refreshing to be part of a group that understands and admits that, okay, as a group we just can't do this, so it's probably better if we stop now. Instead of one or two perhaps being incredibly toxic, blaming everyone else apart from themselves, and then simply leaving the group. Alright, so clearly I wasn't quite up to the task of healing 18s. Perhaps I wasn't to blame for everything, but my healing just wasn't up to it and I was making a lot of mistakes. And I needed one more key to fill the vault, so I decided to jump into a Halls of Infusion 15, just to get it done. And I don't feel like I need to cover much of this run at all. But there is one thing that I just want to stress once again, the ads at the last boss. If you haven't got the CC to deal with them, don't interrupt them, because the ability they cast does so much damage. And when we're already lacking DPS, dude, it's super stressful for the healer. I'm pretty sure I pointed this out in the last episode, but I'm going to do it again because so many players just don't seem to understand. So we do end up taking down the last boss, we 2-chest this key, and it takes our total rating up to 2041. So there we have it, the end of the Mistweaver Monk 0 to KSM challenge. But there's still one thing we need to do. We need to end the challenge in style. What does that mean exactly? Well, of course, we're going to fly to the highest point in Valdrakken. We're going to jump off and see how far we get. In Season 1, the DK made it to the flight path, so I'm kind of hopeful that this guy goes just that little bit further. So, as the monk prepares himself, I would just like to thank you guys for all the love and support on the series. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode. If you did, a like would be much appreciated. But that's me and Rodar done. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Yo, Brian, you're up. Take it away, man.
Ouch, here we go again. And a 1, and a 2. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. Well, that's all the words I know. Love you, bye.